Good evening, everyone, and happy Friday. I'm Mayor Pro Tem Tasha Harper-Madison, proud City Council representative of District 1 in East and Northeast Austin. Welcome to another edition of my bi-weekly live stream, Talk with Tasha. We're coming at you every 2 weeks with critical conversations about the issues that matter to you most. Austin City Council, I'm sorry. Okay, she doesn't care that I'm on a show. With the issues that matter to you most. You're just going to have to hear my daughter screaming in the background. If you're like me and you like to exercise your right to vote, this May is going to be packed with delights. Austin City Council voted last month to put 8 different proposals on the May 1st ballot. Questions range from the mayor's role in city government to the independence of the Office of Police Oversight. We'll probably be talking about a few of those things on this show in the weeks ahead, but tonight we're tackling one topic that will be center stage at this campaign season. That, of course, is homelessness. 2 years ago, my council colleagues and I voted to rescind our city rules that prohibited people from sleeping in public. In our increasingly unaffordable city, it seems cruel to me to punish people simply because they cannot afford a bedroom. Nonetheless, the decision brought the full scale of our homelessness crisis to light. People who had been sleeping in creek beds or in the woods have pitched tents under the highway and overpasses and other high-profile locations. In our downtown, in the shadow of million-dollar penthouses, people experiencing abject poverty are living in tents. No one likes seeing the tent communities pop up in our public sphere. But I believe we should channel that discomfort we feel into a search for solutions rather than a retreat from the festering problem. However, Proposition B on this May's ballot would reverse council's action and recriminalize public camping. It's important to understand that this reversal would not move us 1 inch closer to ending homelessness in our city. It would force people back into the shadows, into the green belts and creek beds, into dangerous conditions where service providers will have a much more difficult time reaching them. It won't create new housing, invest in critical services, or provide new jobs and financial stability. Austin is a compassionate city, and it's full of people who are eager to find constructive solutions to this monumental crisis. There are several fantastic organizations that provide immeasurable support on the front lines. They are staffed by folks who work with people experiencing homelessness day in and day out. So when we talk about finding solutions, these are the folks that I want to have a spot at the table. Tonight, I have several faces from these groups joining me. I'm super excited to talk to my good friend Courtney Santana later, the CEO of Survive to Thrive Foundation. Her wheelhouse includes the nexus of homelessness and domestic violence. Sometimes that maybe goes overlooked in these discussions. We'll talk to Courtney and give that discussion the full attention it deserves later in the show. But first, 2 people from 2 important groups here in Austin. First, Community Engagement Coordinator for the Other Ones Foundation, Max Moscow, and founder and CEO of Mobile Loaves and Fishes, the outfit that runs the Community First Village just outside of District 1, the great Alan Graham himself. Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us.
Oh, it's so great to be here. Thank you.
Well, this is the fun part. Now the hard part is us finding the solutions, right? And so, as we roll in, I want you to both understand you can just sort of fly in whenever you'd like to respond. But I would love to know, what do both of your organizations do?
Okay. The Other Ones Foundation provides humanitarian aid, case management, and extremely low barrier employment opportunities for people experiencing homelessness. And most recently, we've stepped up as stewards of the Esperanza community, which is a state-sanctioned homeless encampment with about 150 people there. And it's right at the intersection of 183 and 71 in Southeast Austin.
Thank you.
Yeah, and so Mobile Loaves and Fishes is really a three-legged stool. First, and been going on for 23 years, is our food truck ministry that's out on the streets every night serving the homeless. We have now served about 6 million meals here in Central Texas. Secondly, and what we're really becoming well known for, is our community first housing model, a 51-acre master plan community in far northeast Austin that will have about 550 homes, and we're actually planning another ginormous expansion here that we'll announce pretty soon. And then our Community Works program that attempts to empower people into a cultivating lifestyle where they can earn a dignified income that last year alone netted our friends nearly $1 million. And we're grateful to be on this show with you today.
I appreciate you joining us. I think one of the things that a lot of folks don't understand, right? And that's the root causes of homelessness. Can either of you speak to that in your experience?
Well, for us, we believe that homelessness exists at the intersection of a number of broken systems. And we believe that the superhighway into that roundabout that almost has no exit is a profound catastrophic loss of family. Because all of the broken things that exacerbate homeless, whether it's mental health, physical health, addiction issues, affordable housing, living wage, the foster care system. These things already exist inside of all of our families. But for the most part, we're able to come up underneath that and keep that safety net of them leaking out onto the streets. So what people see as a very simple issue actually turns out, in our opinion, to be extraordinarily complex.
I couldn't agree more. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I mean, that really hits the nail on the head. And you talk, when you ask a lot of folks and they'll say, oh, well, like addiction, mental health, those are the roots of homelessness. But we know a lot of people who go through those experiences or go through, say, a catastrophic medical experience, and they don't end up homeless. And it's because they started from a place of privilege when they walked into those experiences. And so they were able to come out the other side. You know, one person's bump in the road is another person's disaster. So I think, yeah, Alan, you really summed it up well there.
Well, it's important.
Yeah, we have a phrase at Mobile Loaves and Fishes that housing alone will never solve homelessness, but community will. By the way, that doesn't mean that we don't believe in housing. We believe, just as you said in that KXAN article, council member, that housing is a foundation. But what we do is we just take that up a level and create a very powerful relational community, as you've witnessed when we've been out there, because humans need to connect, human to human, heart to heart, and our friends on the street. I mean, it's incredible. The average age of the men and women in our community is 58 years old. The average number of years on the streets is 10 years. 65% have 2 or more comorbid diseases, and the average age of death is 59.
Wow.
Think about this. I mean, we were just talking before the show that as we enter into our 50s with Courtney, that, we desire these certain things, but to think that we were all going to, on average, die before 59 would be a pretty crazy number, And so it's a very caustic environment out there on the streets that, frankly, is costing you and I a ton of dollars.
Well, and that's one of the things that we can really bring it back to, right? If you can't get humans to recognize the humanity of other folks, oftentimes dollars and cents speak to them. And so, being able to quantify the cost. I'd like to ask, so with the Other Ones Foundation, how did the winter storm complicate y'all's efforts? Did it bring any surprising or disappointing lessons?
I mean, it complicated everything, right? But we're dealing with a place right now out at the Esperanza community that's like it's a borderline humanitarian crisis out there, and we've done everything that we can as fast as we can to ameliorate the living conditions there, but there's still a lack of access to shelter. We're building individual non-congregate shelter dwellings out there for folks to use as transitional places to live, but we've only managed to build 6 so far, and so everybody else had to go to warming stations downtown. We opened up our office on site as a warming station, but it was a really rough week, and then it's been a lot of work rebuilding from there. There's a lot of makeshift structures out there that did not make it through the heavy snow and ice. And I'll just say this wasn't surprising at all, but it was just a very profound moment for me personally. We know that disasters like this or like COVID-19 shine a light on inequities in our society. And I had a day where I was at Esperanza, and then I left and came back to my neighborhood and saw, families and kids like playing in the snow. And it was so crazy to be seeing some people sort of ride this out almost as a vacation.
Right. And
having been just earlier at a place where people were in very, very real peril. And I mean, that's not surprising. So it's kind of not the answer to your question, but it was just this incredibly profound moment to look at the disparity between Esperanza and then my neighborhood that I got to go home to.
Well, you absolutely answered the question, but you're also speaking to something that Alan was talking about, with community. And I think one of the things that we all have to remember, right? I think I heard somebody use the expression oppression Olympics one time. Suffering does not have to be unilateral. The two things can exist at the same time. Little kids can see snow for maybe the first time and squeal with delight, but then other members of our community, be destitute. The two things can and do exist at the same time. And that actually leads me to another question that I'd like to ask. Just sort of, and I think, Alan, you might be the best one to answer this one. One of the issues that we face on council in selecting sites for people to go, people who are experiencing homelessness. And so how do we overcome? I think, one of the ways that the Community First Village was able to overcome some of the restrictions of being inside the city limits is, being just outside in the ETJ. How do we overcome this stubborn attitude of not in my backyard?
Well, eliminate zoning.
Yeah. But yeah, I hear you.
Yeah. Zoning is really the, to me, there's a couple of things, council member. One is zoning, and maybe there's a bracketed classification for affordable housing that can go anywhere in our city, and that's just how it's going to be. And if you, apply for that zoning category to build affordable housing, you're going to get it there. So that would be interesting. The other thing, and this is very complex because, I understand, having been through the NIMBY deal and through the council deal, especially back in 2008 with the city council when they reversed a unanimous decision to grant us a long-term ground lease on 17 acres within the city. The ability, your stewardship of our city has a myriad of issues that you are called to steward, and homelessness happens to be one of those. Right. But there are many other issues that cause you to want to run for political office. And what I've discovered politically is most people, and smartly so, don't want to die on one single sword. And so when you were being yelled and screamed at and threatened with recall, and frankly, I'm sure threatened with death threats that happen on that, you make a political decision about whether you're going to die on that sword or not. And so I honor the difficulty of a political body, and one that is fraternal in nature, the way that our city council or county commissioners are, in making those hard decisions. And if you look at the Candlewood deal right now, when you're being attacked at a myriad of different places, whether it's Williamson County or the neighborhoods or the hotels next door, or the restaurants or whatever, it makes those decisions very tough. So it's complicated.
Very much so. Were you able to watch that council meeting where we deliberated about Candlewood?
Did not.
It was one of those ones where you hear people's testimony and you have to recognize, their humanity also. So what they're saying is they're experiencing discomfort. What they're saying is they're experiencing fear. What they're saying is they're experiencing concern and anxiety about their family safety. And those things can be true for them. You can't dictate how a person receives their environment, right? So I think one of the things that we all have to do a better job of is when we have this difficult conversation, like you said, it's everything about it is complex. And I really appreciate the analogy you made earlier about it being circular, because it absolutely is. Poverty is cyclical. And so I think one of the things that if we remind ourselves to appreciate the other person's contribution to the conversation, then we may not be that far apart, and it may not feel so personal, like an attack, visceral, And I think that's one of those things that we all just got to flex that emotional maturity muscle a little more and treat one another a little better as we talk through the issues and acknowledge everybody's truth, because I think that's important.
Well, when you look at Mobile Loaves and Fishes as an example, and the diversity of support that we have across the community, from the far left wing to the far right wing and everybody in between, we've learned along the way that these are all extraordinary human beings with wonderful gifts and beautiful hearts, but they differ on certain issues that are out there. But we also have a common denominator for Mobile Loaves and Fishes of a desire to help our brothers and sisters out there, on the streets. And that's why Mobile Loaves have stayed in the lane, that it's in. And, we don't come for or against different things, because we have constituents that are going to be, the hands not handcuffed, the homes not handcuffs people, all the way to the Save Austin Now people. And, we're trying to figure out how to work with all of them to do good in the community.
My grandmother used to say, it takes all kinds, baby girl.
Yeah.
When we remember.
We've been calling it around our office, we've been calling it the come on with it method. Meaning we don't see eye to eye on certain things, and outside of this conversation, maybe this person that I'm talking to, I really actually wouldn't care for, but the fact is that we are able to align on this one thing. And like you were saying, Alan, we may not even agree on how to get there, but we're able to align on this end goal. And so even if I'm not like your biggest fan, come on with it. Let's get something done.
I'm going to borrow that. I hope y'all don't have a trademark on that. I'm borrowing that one.
But what was it called, Max?
The come on with it method.
Oh, the come on with it. Yeah. Well, the one thing that I love more than anything else on the planet is the truth.
Right.
And I can't stand it when people cook the books and try to manipulate numbers that don't exist.
Right.
Or make believe that something's happening. And that's the problem when you get into a deal like we're in right now, and you're hearing and people talk about anecdotal this or anecdotal that. And what we want to do is be able to communicate the reality of what's going on out there in the world. And I'm going to tell you, with an extraordinary complex problem that this is, we can beat this in Austin, Texas.
I agree.
And I'm not saying solve it, but I tell you, we can mitigate this to a level that makes our city, a shining city on the hillside. I believe that in my heart. We are not LA or Seattle or Portland, Oregon. We are Austin, Texas, and we collectively, we the people, the constitutional we the people, we can do this. And I'll tell you something else that frustrates the PWAD out of me. I hope you say PWAD on this deal.
Everything goes.
Yeah, is stop yelling at the mayor and the council. Stop it and join us. What was the movement again, Max?
Come on with
it, method.
Come on with it, movement. Yeah.
Hey, Alan, so with you closing us out with you in such a passionate way, I can't help but imagine all of those volunteers that y'all are able to get out there to the Community First Village. That, it all just takes one step. So I wonder if folks want to get in touch with y'all out at Community First or in touch with you at Mobile Loaves and Fishes. Is there a website they should visit?
Oh, absolutely. Go to MLF, that for Mobile Loaves and Fishes, MLF.org.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You can email me directly. I'm ALAN, Alan at MLF.org.
Good thing. So Alan was explicit. He said that they can't be for or against anything. Max, I'm going to ask you a question. And
I was going to defer this one to Alan.
So I guess I will not be getting your take on Prop B and the May ballot.
I cannot. I have lots of feelings about them, but they have to remain private because of the dance that we're doing right now with just we got city bucks, we got state stuff going on. So I'm just gonna. I'll just say this: whether it's legal or not, people can't be living in the streets in the woods. It's crazy. We're in the one of the most affluent cities on the face of the earth.
Look, I'll make this statement. The conversation ever since we overturned those ordinances, in my humble opinion, has been phenomenal for the city of Austin.
Awesome.
And I hope if the overturned ordinances get overturned again, that we don't lose sight of that conversation. And that's been great. And I'll tell you, whether the ordinances are there or not, doesn't move the needle at all in alleviating homelessness. And honestly, it's not going to make people feel safe. Our neighbors are still going to be there. You just won't be able to see them the way that you see them today. So, so no matter how you feel, no matter what side of those ordinances, there's two organizations on this show right now that are out there busting it every single day to lift people up out of that environment.
And we appreciate y'all so much, so very much. Max, with that, is there a way that they can get in touch with TOOF, the Other Ones Foundation?
Yeah. It's www.toof.org or TOOFOUND.org. Or you can hit me up directly, max@toofound.org.
Awesome. Thank you. I really appreciate both of y'all coming to visit us today. And I look forward to continuing this conversation because I absolutely believe that Alan's onto something. But, it's one of those things. Why not dream big? We're literally watching. So my pastor used to say this thing when the world has changed, and he said, you can feel it. It's humming. And he'd say, the veil is thin. And I feel like the veil is thin. I think, we literally have infrastructure that's breaking down around us. I think we're breaking down systems. I think we're breaking down stereotypes. I think we're, breaking down infrastructure, systemic infrastructure that doesn't work for caring for all of God's children, right? So with that, I'm going to let y'all go, but something tells me we'll be talking again soon. I really appreciate you coming to visit us today. So Mr. Alan Graham with Mobile Loaves and Fishes and the Community First Village and Max Moscow from the Other Ones Foundation. Thank y'all for being here. Have a good rest of your weekend.
Awesome.
Thank you. Have a great rest of your night.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you. All right, y'all. So it is absolutely critical to understand that our homeless population is not some monolithic object, right? And I think conversations like these, diversity of thought really allows us to hold on to that truth. Here in Austin, we're talking about more than 2,000 individuals with their own unique humanity, their own backgrounds, their own lives filled with infinite circumstances that led them to where they are today. People struggling with severe mental illness and or substance abuse, young people turned out of their homes because of who they are, working people on the bottom rung of the ladder who just didn't have the resilience to weather the storm, to weather the financial or medical crisis, and also victims of domestic violence. One woman working boldly at the intersection, not just to help, but also to empower survivors of domestic abuse, is Courtney Santana, CEO of Survive to Thrive Foundation. She's here tonight to help us gain some clarity about uncomfortable issues we as a society have long turned a blind eye to. Courtney, thank you for being here again.
Thank you for having me. I'm honored. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. I hope you're doing well. And I love these conversations because if nothing else, I really do think we're leaving people with a different perspective.
Yeah.
Oftentimes, folks come to watch this show that don't necessarily agree with me ideologically. And I think that's a good thing. We should hear one another out. So, as I said in the lead-in, when I said it, I found myself saying it, but I've also heard people say intimate partner violence.
Yeah.
And so just to be appropriate, should people say domestic violence or intimate partner violence? And if there's a preference between the two, can you tell me why?
Well, domestic violence can happen between a sibling and a sibling. It can happen between it could be any mix of those people. When you talk about intimate partner violence, you're usually talking about partner spouses.
Gotcha.
So that's usually the difference.
Well, so for folks who aren't familiar, can you tell us a little bit about Survive to Thrive and what y'all do?
Yes. Okay. So Survive to Thrive. I'm a survivor of domestic violence. It's been 21 years. I actually lived here at Safe Place with my two children. Then they were 2 and 8 months old. And when I left, I was like, this is my trauma family. I can't just walk away from this. I have to stay involved and continue with the mission of helping my new family out. So I started to find ways, creating arts in the community, doing Christmas parties and holiday parties there at the shelter. And then they asked me to start speaking and serve on their board. And in that opportunity, I found out that there was an issue. When I went into the shelter, it was 2000 going into 2001, and Austin did not have the population issues that they now have. There is an issue with victim displacement and homelessness because they can't get into those valuable resources at the shelter due to lack of beds. And that's where Survive to Thrive really got its foothold, was how do we create strategies and capacities for shelters and for any other organization looking to house this particular community of people? Because right now, before COVID, it was 48% were turned away from the shelter. And now we're looking closer to 94 to 95% because of the social distancing protocols.
I want to make sure I heard you correctly. Did you say 94 to 95% of people are turned away from shelters that are looking for safety?
Yes. Right now, yes, during COVID, it was almost an immediate shutdown because they already didn't have capacity before COVID, and then they went to 50%.
Wow.
So it was like, where do you put all of these people? You can't just let them go and sleep in their cars. They can't be sleeping under bridges. There's capacity here, and we just took advantage of the opportunity to really start building those partnerships in the community, private-public partnerships.
I really appreciate that innovation because that's what it's going to require. Mm-hmm. So, like I said earlier about our homeless population not being a monolith, there's a tendency to treat people without homes as though they are some sort of monolith. But the fact is, we are talking about thousands of individuals. And, countless circumstances, I think we really, it would be great for me to hear from you. How many people living without secure housing are there because of domestic violence or intimate partner violence?
Well, we've identified in our research that 13% of Austin's homeless population will self-identify as victims of domestic violence or abuse. So they've either, I mean, Alan he says it perfectly. I quote him all the time. It is a catastrophic loss of family and of network. So our survivors are catastrophically losing everything at one time. They lose their partner, they can't go home, they lose their jobs. It's just this, ping pong effect for them, just a spiral down. So 13% have said that, but I believe it's much, much more than that.
So the last time you were on the show, we were talking about how the stay-home orders were potentially trapping victims with their abusers. How has that evolved as the months have gone on? I think maybe you spoke to it when you talked about shelter capacity, but I know that there was a significant increase at one point in time. How has that situation evolved?
Well, and it's interesting. People don't want to have to choose between going to a shelter where they could potentially be exposed to, COVID, or an unfamiliar environment. And then they're like, okay, well, then I'll just stay home with my violence. And sometimes the violence it'll swell. It's like this thing is just growing and growing and growing over time. And people really struggle with being inside their homes with their abusers. There's fewer opportunities for them to make an outcry. So they can't make an outcry at work or with their friends or their circles of influence. We're also seeing a rise in child abuse because children are not at schools, unable to tell their teachers when they're dealing with something at home. And the longer you're in there, the worse the violence tends to get. It's one of the first signs of domestic abuse is isolation. So if there's prolonged periods of isolation, you're going to see that. I'm also seeing, we talk to the police all the time. We work with APD quite closely, and they're seeing a lot of aggravated assault calls. So they might not be coming in as domestic violence, but they're coming in as aggravated assault calls to us.
It's frightening.
It is. And I just want to go back to your point talking about they're not the Borg. I mean, homelessness, like seriously, they do. They're someone's child, That's somebody's, possible father and mother. And I tell people all the time, when you want to classify them and put them all in one group, look at them as children. They were children at one time. Does it help you to see them as children? Does that make it better? Because we have to start identifying them as human beings and give them back their humanity, because they're not, part of the Borg. They're not part of the monolith that you were talking about. Right. I totally agree.
And I think that's where policy comes in, to be honest with you, because more often than not, we're not going to change hearts here. Right. We may not even change minds, right? But we have policy in place that offers the necessary protections for people in our community. That's how we make that change. Are there ways that our viewers can help support your mission? It's very important work. I want to make sure that they get the opportunity to offer you as much support as you can take.
Sure. As much as we can take. We can take it all. Come on. What is it? Come on with it. Like Max says. I will tell you that we are still surviving the winter storm right now. Like, we were putting up the homeless and unhoused and displaced communities during the winter storm. We are about to place several from an apartment complex that was struggling like tonight. This is an ongoing problem. I don't want the community at large to go back to thinking that this is fixed. You need to continue to go out there and support these organizations that are really doing the boots on the ground work and working with the communities and really understand what the people they're serving need. I would say there was a group that called the Community Resilience ATX that brought all these nonprofits together, and we all work together in different aspects to help this community during the winter storm. I will say, for Survive to Thrive, we are trying to make sure that we have a hotel safety net going on for perpetuity. We were using it before the winter storm. We've been using it since 2006. We have to keep this capacity because, COVID showed us that we don't know every eventuality that would happen. We don't know the winter storm, the shocker of the century. We don't know how our city will be affected. We need a way to house people who don't have homes. Period. And domestic violence victims who can't get into shelter are homeless. They are classified as homeless and displaced.
Absolutely. And I often think, when we have conversations about people experiencing homelessness, I think folks get that, that propaganda image, they see one thing, and can't really allow themselves to appreciate the nuances, can't really allow themselves to appreciate the fact that it is complex and tiered and multifaceted. It's all
I
the
tell you, yeah.
yeah,
Well,
absolutely.
and COVID and the winter storm did something for all of us. Like we've talked about, it's the great equalizer. We were all in the same boat. We all needed this. I mean, we housed just as many people who didn't have electricity and water in their homes. So we could all be brought to our knees in a very, very, I mean, what was that? In a matter of days? I mean, that's exactly what happened. And I want to thank publicly the Austin Hotel and Lodging Association for helping us to build that capacity and helping us to work with our hotel partners to get folks into the hotels. And we want to keep that. That has to be here as a safeguard for our city.
Absolutely. And, I think it's one of those overlooked resources. And one of the things that we've been able to do during the course of, back after back, rapid succession crises is really make some assessments about our assets. So we really need to make certain that we're utilizing all our assets to their highest, best use. And so having empty hotel rooms and people who need a place to sleep,
Right.
is incongruent. And I think we can balance that out. So as we recalibrate, though, and really think about that sort of thing, is there any other way that people can offer support? I guess, on the website. Can you see the website again for me?
Yes, it's Survive to Thrive, the number 2. I always have to say that because people try to make it TOO.
Oh.
Survive to Thrive Foundation.org. When we place someone into the hotel, we provide them hotel stay for, we determine the period of time. We also provide them food resources. So we provide them groceries, clothing if necessary. We provide them toiletries, and we also provide them case management because our goal is not to keep them in the hotel forever. Our goal is to get them on a path to whatever that recovery looks like for them. Success is different for everybody. Like you said, it's not a monolith. It's made up of human beings who have different paths and different desires and different needs and wants. So that's why our case management is essential to their success.
And, I think some folks, when they hear case management, they don't necessarily know what that means. But I remember hearing you say publicly one time, you said something about not housing a victim of intimate partner violence if you don't have a safety plan and an exit strategy.
That's
and
right.
That's stuck with me always. And so that's the kind of things I'm assuming that your case manager works with you on.
Yes. So, I mean, like Alan said and Max said, this is not just a one shot at this person's life. It was a lot of things that went wrong all at once. So you have to build some sort of strategic plan. You have to go through each of the steps and say, okay, they lost their house, they lost their job. Try to figure out a strategic plan and work with them to build those resources, because resources are scattered all over the place. And a lot of times they're not talking to each other. Our goal is to put them all together and make sure that they're talking together for the benefit of our clients. Is that what's best for your clients? And if you can't say yes, you should be fixing your program and making it so that everybody is talking to each other. I love that during the winter storm. I have to tell you, everybody was trying to work together. And it's probably one of the first times I've ever seen it. And it did my heart good. And I feel like it's a step in the right direction. So case management from the standpoint, how do you build a plan for somebody who's lost everything, and put them within arm's length of the resources to help them rebuild?
I feel so fortunate that that's something that, you all are intentional about, because it absolutely is necessary. Well, so I won't keep you too long. It is Friday evening. Courtney Santana of Survive to Thrive Foundation, I want to thank you for joining us. It's been a pleasure as usual.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Thank you for having me. Anytime you want to, I will be here. I love it. I'm going to come on with it. Just let me know.
I appreciate that you said it again. I want to make sure I don't forget that.
Well, can I say one last thing? I just feel like this is absolutely, every time we have a crisis in the city, it's an opportunity. That's what's keeping me going. And positive leaders like you and Alan and Max, I see how they are totally working to build a solution, but it's not based on the woe is me attitude. It's like, this is our opportunity to fix something that's broken, y'all. And let's do it together. I'm all for it. I am here for it. And I want to support however we can.
I appreciate that enthusiasm. I feel that same sense of optimism. I mean, it's kind of crazy to feel optimistic, but in this moment in time, being able to have that bird's eye view of all the things happening simultaneously, I really do see an opportunity ahead of us. And I look forward to working on it together. Thank you for joining us, Courtney. It's good to see you. Have a good night.
You too.
All right, y'all. So we've had a lot of food for thought tonight about an incredibly difficult problem facing Austin. Poverty has been a part of our civilization since the very beginning, but that doesn't make it an intractable problem. From slavery to smallpox, the nation has found ways to put an end to afflictions that had lasted through millennia before. Austin is one of the most prosperous cities in the richest nation in world history. We need to fully commit ourselves to being the compassionate, progressive city we say we are. Let's hold true to the values we claim. We cannot sweep this problem under the rug. We cannot turn a blind eye to people in crisis. We need to embrace the idea that we are a big city now, and that comes with big city problems and requires big city solutions. Public investments, those are gonna be key. We cannot gloss over that. It's imperative. Working with our community partners is going to be key as well. Recognizing that we can't always rely on the state or the federal government will be key. But also recognizing our own fault and helping to create this crisis is key. We can't keep trying to keep Austin what it was in 1985. We can't keep standing in our own way, screaming, "Not in my backyard." These aren't problems we can just pretend are someone else's to take care of. We are strong enough to overcome the many challenges ahead if we do it together. One Austin, one city. That does it for this week's installment of Talk with Tasha. We'll be back here again live on Friday. Oh, today is Friday, March 12th. We'll be back here live Friday after next to tackle the tough topic of, actually, there's a question mark. It looks like it's going to be a surprise. So in the meantime, if you have any questions or concerns, you can always reach out to me through the District 1, that's the number 1 office. The email address is district1, number 1 at austintexas.gov. So until next time, I'd like to encourage y'all to stay safe, stay healthy, and keep it funky, but make it function. Come on, y'all. What was the expression? You have to tell me again later, Max. Thank y'all for joining us. Have a good weekend.